Hello again. It's been quite a while. Thank you for coming here today. I need to get more consistent with my content, and I've had certain things happen in my life. However, I'm here with another book review for my channel, Book Talk. In this video specifically, it's not just going to be a book review, but it's also going to be me going over some of my favorite quotes from the book, as well as a story and a lesson involving this book. So for those of you who aren't into books or this isn't really your thing, hey, have a good one. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. For the rest of you, if you perhaps are looking for a lesson or some form of entertainment, well, feel free to sit down, as I have the book I'm going to review next, a particular essay from a book actually, Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Before I get into this though, who was Ralph Waldo Emerson? Ralph Waldo Emerson was born in 1803. He was a rock star, and his tour bus was a horse-drawn carriage. He lectured thousands of times around the United States, spreading the idea of self-reliance. He was a major figure in a movement called Transcendentalism. Now, what is Transcendentalism? Transcendentalism was the idea, in this case at least, that divine spark that everybody was looking for in communities and outside, it was actually located within. The goodness, the power, the love, it was here. Why look elsewhere? And not only was he one of the major figures of that movement, he was also a major figure in the idea of individualism. In fact, the way that the United States is shaped today, with many things being concentrated on individual achievement and individual satisfaction, much of that can be attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Also, as a side fact, he graduated from Harvard Divinity School, and much of the literature written, all these poets like Robert Frost, they were heavily influenced by the man. With that out of the way, how is the actual essay itself? Self-Reliance is broken up into 3 different parts, each 16 pages. And the theme of self-reliance is portrayed beautifully throughout. On one part, he's talking about the barriers to self-reliance. Then he's talking about the self as far as self-reliance, right, the individual. And then he talks about self-reliance and society. And the message is pretty much the same throughout, but he uses a wide variety of quotes and language. It's very florid, very flowery. A lot of images will pop up in the mind. For example, one of my favorite quotes in the book is, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, ... And it continues. And when he said that, and I thought of the hobgoblin, for some reason in my mind, it was like a little Christmas elf gnawing around in my mind. It was very impactful. And there are many different quotes throughout that impacted me like that. As far as the structure, how it's written, masterful writer. Every letter, every word, every sentence, and every single paragraph is lined up perfectly. You know where you're at all times. I would say the only thing that threw me off a little bit was the Old English, but that's kind of how they spoke and wrote back then. So that's not really a big deal. As far as what I give Self-Reliance itself, it definitely stays on topic. It does not stray. It's very powerful. You can tell, because of the thousands of lectures, you can tell that the man was clearly dedicated to the cause and was very intelligent. I myself, if I'm going to use emojis, right? Smiley face emojis. Let's say out of 10 smiley face emojis, I'm going to give it 9 smiley faces out of 10 because of the powerful message, the language used, the different quotes, and how clear it was. I will take away 1 smiley face because of the little bit of Old English, and I see that many people might look into this essay and say, well, maybe he didn't mention women, maybe he didn't mention those of other races, maybe he was from a privileged background. Hey, so be it. But the lesson from it is great. And so again, I stick by my opinion, 9 out of 10. From that, I'm going to move on to my favorite quotes in the book, and I'm going to start on page 22. Let's pull that up really quick. Page 22. Your goodness must have some edge to it, else it is none. What does that mean? The way I translate it is this. If you think you're pure, if all you're about is the good, who are you? And what I mean is this. We all have our own insecurities. We all have our darkness. We all have the times where we struggle. Every single human being seems to have that within them. And sometimes if you try to act holier than thou, or that you're above everybody else, you fail to connect with people. And so when I looked at that, it reminded me of this another quote by a philosopher named Alan Watts, right? That everybody has that little pepper, that little spice in the stew, that no one's purely good, that we all have a little bit of that little rascal in us in order to make life interesting, to bring variety to life. So I appreciated that quote. I then go to page 25. Here we go. What I must do is all that concerns me, not what the people think. I liked that quote because around this passage, Emerson is talking about how you should state an opinion that you have boldly, to use courage, and try to use your wisdom or that source from within to speak. Now, granted, many people say, why speak if you haven't learned enough, or if you're not consistent? But he realized that life, in many ways, isn't consistent. The outside world is changing. Your insides and your thoughts are changing. And so at any given moment, it doesn't mean that you can't change your opinion. Stand up for who you are. Speak the words that are true to you in the moment. So I appreciated that. And then my last quote, out of the many that I could go on with, is on page 58, if I'm not mistaken. Let me find it here. There it is. Regret calamities, if you can thereby help the sufferer. If not, attend your own work, and already the evil begins to be repaired. Now, the reason why this quote really impacted me is because the way I generally communicate with people is almost as if I'm some sort of guidance counselor. I like to ask questions, but most of the time I'm listening to what the other person is thinking and feeling and saying. And in this, what I realize is that many times we don't offer solutions, or if we have a solution, we don't offer it up to the person, something that can solve their problems. And if we don't have legitimate solutions for the person, sometimes, if the listening's not enough and it continues, sometimes we need to work on ourselves. We need to work on our own insecurities, our own demons, our own areas where we're a little weak. And then if we work on ourselves, the person we're communicating with, by seeing us, how we're doing, can be influenced by us. And even if not, when we work on ourselves and we come back to communicate with them again, we're a more powerful force. We're more attuned to what's within. And so I appreciated that, giving another perspective on communication. Now, I throw that book to the side, as graciously as I can, of course. And now it's story time involving self-reliance. Now, my story begins the other day. I actually had just purchased that book with the essays in it. And I'm walking into, yes, the healthiest, most gourmet Chinese food, Panda Express. Of course, my diet is being scrutinized right now. And I order food. I then walk up to the counter. And I see this man we'll call Jack. He was actually more like 18, 19. And he's staring at me like this. I go, what is he staring at me for? He said, you know what? You remind me of someone from my past. You have the same vibe, the same energy. Now, at first, he's staring at me. And so inside I'm thinking, is he judging me? Is he thinking I'm old? But on the outside, I'm nice and calm and relaxed. And then I ask him, well, who do I remind you of from your past? And he said, you remind me of my guidance counselor, Brian. Just the way you act, the way you feel. I said, okay, I guess I've been compared to a guidance counselor. That's cool. I order my food and we have a positive exchange. Then I go to a table and I sit down and I start eating while reading. And as I'm doing so, I look to the corner and I see Jack is sweeping by me. And as he's sweeping, he begins to have a conversation with me. He says, hey, what's that book about? I said, well, a lot of it's about tuning to within, overcoming challenges, overcoming suffering, things of that nature. And he said, wow, that's great. You know, Brian was one of the most important people of my life. I wasn't going to graduate. I had no chance at a relationship. And yet here I am. I graduated high school and I'm engaged. I said, wow, Jack, that's amazing. How's Brian doing anyway? He said that Brian, who was his guidance counselor, moved up to the Bay Area and is doing really well. And he's actually trying to collect donations for individuals who are struggling. And he's talking to a bunch of different celebrities and making a lot of connections. So all around, I'm hearing and seeing these positive vibes. And then he's like, you know what, man, the fact that you're reading these books, you remind me so much about him. And I haven't talked to him in a while, but you know what? I'm going to give him a call. I said, wow, I didn't know that me walking in with the book would cause you to reconnect with one of the most important people you'd ever had in your life. He's like, yeah. And I want you to remember this, man. He said to me, if anything in life you're struggling with, he said, dirty your hands and get after it again. Dirty your hands and get after it again, he said. I was like, wow, that's true. You can always keep trying. You don't have to give up. And after a few more minutes of exchange, I said, hey, Jack. And he said, yeah. I then said, Brian's very proud of you. And he's going to be proud of the person you're going to continue to become. But most importantly, this. You yourself are going to continually be proud of the person that you can be and that you're going to become. And he smiled at me and went back to the Panda Express counter. And I look at this self-reliance idea. Now, are we interdependent in this world? Are there external variables outside of ourselves that help us? Yes. However, when it comes to self-reliance, in Jack's case, Brian, who was his guidance counselor, was there, right? You could argue that he was a force for him. But guess what? Jack took the action. Jack did the work. He consulted within, and he did the things he needed to do to graduate from high school and to get into a relationship that's going to come into an engagement. He did it. It was he in himself. An outside force might have awakened him, but he himself did it. He relied on his own nature. And so that story right there, when I think of the book Self-Reliance, it's very powerful. Because self-reliance does not mean only consult your feelings, complain, whine, do any of that. All right? We all probably do to some degree. But self-reliance, what's most important about it is that when we turn within, we know we have the strength. We know that we have power. And we know that we have that true love within us to provide to our surroundings, to serve others. And so I leave you all with that lesson from Self-Reliance. And I'm closing it within 15 minutes, thankfully. Thank you all for watching. Any questions, comments, concerns, jokes, opinions, please send them to me. I love hearing different perspectives. With that book talk book review, you guys all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.